Hi everybody, my name is Hannah McCartney.
I'm Haley Assinger.
Gabrielle Blitzman.
Vinny Sansalone.
Again, Jenkins.
And we're here to talk to you guys about issues facing transgender people today. And no, we did not coordinate our outfits. So before we dive into the issues facing transgender people, we want to give you guys a background on what exactly it means to be transgender. So transgender means of, relating to, or being a person who identifies with or expresses a gender identity that differs from the one which corresponds to the person's sex at birth, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. So to help you guys out with that explanation, we have this photo of the genderbread man. Sorry, I knew I messed that up. So the purple section represents the gender identity, so how they view themselves. Whereas the physical sex, the blue part, just represents what they were born with anatomically. So when those two things differ, that means that you are transgender. And then it also goes on to say, like, your sexual orientation is the people that you find attractive or are attracted to, and then the green square represents how you express yourself, like what gender you express yourself more with. So transgender, the word was first used in 1979, and 700,000 people identify as transgender in the U.S., according to the Williams Institute.
Okay, so now before we keep going on, we're going to do a little activity with everyone to give you guys an idea. It's an activity you guys have probably all done before. I know coming into Mount Union as a freshman, you guys play this game. It's called Cross the Line. So if all of you guys can stand up and come to the middle and get into a line, please. Yeah, we can move some desks. Sure. So if you guys can be as honest as possible for this activity, and then we can just be able to see just get a better idea. So, that's fine. You're just going to, basically with this activity, what you're going to do is I'm going to ask questions. And if you agree with them, you're just going to take a step forward. After that question, you'll step back. And this will just be able to see a better understanding compared to the whole class. Okay, so for the first question, I identify as a male. Step forward if this applies to you. Okay, so step back. I identify as a female. Step forward if you agree with this. Okay. Step back. I identify as a transgender individual. Step forward. I identify as someone in between on the spectrum. Step forward if you agree with this. Okay. I have a friend who is transgender. Step forward if you can relate to this. Okay. I have a family member who is transgender. Can anyone relate to this? Step forward. I have a transgender restroom available in my school, university, or workplace. Step forward if you agree with this. So this is a big set of numbers. All right, step back. I was well informed about transgender individuals before the Caitlyn Jenner mainstream. Step forward. So that's not many of us, okay? I dress feminine or masculine because people expect that of my gender. Step forward if you agree with this. Okay. Good. Step back. I act in a specific way because that is what is expected of my gender. Anyone agree with this? Step forward. Okay, so majority of you, step back. I believe the world is an accepting place for people who are transgender. Does anyone agree with this? Step forward. Okay, let's try. I would be afraid to tell my friends that I was transgender. Step forward if you agree with that. Okay, so majority feel as if you'd be afraid to tell your friends, which is someone who's supposed to be close to you. I feel afraid to tell my family that I was transgender. Almost everyone step forward. Okay, step back. My parents would support me if I was transgender. Step forward if you agree with this. Okay. Step back. I would prefer to know if someone was transgender before dating them. Step forward if you agree with this. Okay. Okay, so all of us agree with that. I would feel comfortable having a transgender student as my roommate in college. Step forward. Okay. Regarding gender, I believe our society gives everyone an equal shot at success and happiness. Step forward. That's a no one. Last one. Every day I'm aware of my gender and how it shapes my life. Step forward. All right. So we just have 2 questions to go off of that. Were you guys surprised of any of these answers? And how many people stepped forward or did not step forward in the activity?
I was surprised about the one about transgender bathrooms in your school or
Yeah.
your workplace, because I think we have them here. I just don't think a lot of people know it.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that later because a lot of people aren't aware that we do have those options available to you at the University of Mount Union. Yeah. Does anyone else know? Or does anyone else have any? How did this activity make you feel in the way that transgender people would feel?
I think especially in like this type of classroom, if I was transgender, I feel like I probably wouldn't want to step forward because I'd be the only one. That'd be very intimidating.
Yeah, because no one was stepping forward to say that.
And I was thinking too, just like stepping forward, like in a sense of like agreeing or disagreeing with the question, is really similar as to how like somebody would step forward if they were a transgender student. Like it's kind of hard to come out and say that type of stuff when a society isn't really used to it.
Yeah.
And like even like there are some times that like I was like, should I step forward?
Yeah, well, I saw a lot of you guys
step forward like after somebody else does. So I think like Caitlyn Jenner was kind of like the first one to step forward, and then after she did, like people started coming and saying like, I'm going to step forward too.
I noticed a lot of you were hesitant to step forward in questions that were just simple as I accept my gender and the way I dress. There's things like that. A lot of you looked around and were just hesitant to step forward and be confident in your gender identity.
I think one of the biggest things about this was it made us think about our gender, and a lot of times we're not conscious of it. Like we don't think about how it shapes the way we dress, the way we act. Where someone who is transgender, they're probably thinking about it every single day.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So that made us,
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Were you going to say something?
I was.
Okay, well great. So we'll get back and informing you guys. Thanks for participating.
Alright, now we're going to go over some statistics about transgender, and when we were researching these, some of these were pretty surprising, such as, according to the Williams Institute, in 2014, 15,500 individuals in the military self-identified as transgender. And personally, I thought that was pretty surprising because there used to be the policy of don't ask, don't tell, just serve our country, and that's it. And then according to the American Civil Liberties Union, there have been 18 states that have clear laws protecting the transgender people. And the most recent one is with the whole North Carolina thing. And actually that's been so relevant that even the NBA has decided to move their All-Star game for this sole reason because they don't want to be part of the issue, so they took it out of Charlotte for that only reason. And then according to the National Transgender Discrimination Survey report, 26% of people have lost their job due to identity crisis, and another 50% said they've been harassed in the workplace. So for like all of us personally working, I don't think many of us would be able to handle that pressure of just getting bullied at work all day long. Because if I sit there and I know Haley's transgender and I just sit there and make fun of her, she's probably going to get down on herself and then just feel really bad. And we don't want that to happen to anyone. And the National Transgender Discrimination Survey also said that 41% of transgender people have attempted suicide, and that's more related to the fact that they're getting bullied and pressured in the office, workplace, or even at school.
Moving a little bit more into our different disciplines, being an early childhood education major, it's kind of different to think about how having transgender students would affect me as a teacher, but it for sure is something that would be really relevant. So as a future educator, we want to make sure that all of our students feel comfortable and safe in the classroom. And that's done by having an inclusive environment and being respectful of people's identities and different experiences. And as a future teacher, you'd like to think that you could be like the person to eliminate bullying and be there for your students, and especially when you hear the different statistics about how transgender students or people in general are targeted, we hope that you could be a resource for those kids especially. And Brett Jenny Bean found in a study that 41% seems to be the percent, but 41% of students are reporting harassment, and that's only the amount that are reporting it. A lot of harassment will go unreported, especially because students will think someone else is having it worse than I am, or it doesn't matter, or they're embarrassed about it. So it's important to consider that that's only the amount that's being reported. And then something also to consider when you're dealing with having transgender students in schools, when you have classes that are in early elementary grades, so like preschool, kindergarten, a lot of the times when you think of transgender students, the first thing is where are they going to go to the bathroom? And this is kind of solved for those really early elementary grades because they're all using the classroom bathroom. It's kind of everyone's in the same place. And then it starts to become more of an issue when you get into upper elementary, when you're starting to designate this is the boys' bathroom, this is the girls' bathroom, and having to make that decision. And then moving on into high school and college, it doesn't get any easier. And then even the content that you're teaching is affected by whether or not you have transgender students in your classroom, whether or not they're going by different pronouns. So when you're teaching pronouns, it's he, she, they. You might have students that prefer to go by they instead of she or he. And that's something that you will have to teach to your students. And then when you get into upper grades such as biology and saying that this is anatomically what you have but maybe not emotionally what you have, and then of course sex ed.
So we want to know what you guys have to say about this. How early should schools start accommodating for the children in their youth? Do you guys have any opinions on how early they should start?
I think super early. Children especially young ages like kindergarten, their gender is more fluid than when it gets set in by gender norms and gender roles. So by accommodating it at a super young age, you'll make those who actually are transgender feel more comfortable and in place.
Good. Yeah. Anyone else have an opinion on what age they should start accommodating? Yes.
Like working in a school environment with preschoolers. I work with 4-year-olds, and when we take them all to the bathroom, we take them all to the women's bathroom because the teacher and I are both female, so we just take all the children into that restroom. And even at 4 years old, some of the kids are like, well, I want to go to the boy restroom. So even, at that young of an age, children can understand that there are two separate bathrooms depending on the gender you are.
So we need to be aware that they are conscious of this even at such a young age.
And this really relates to one of the articles that I used in my lit review, and it was talking about the clinical issues of children that relate to being transgender before they've gone through puberty. So this study that was published in the Journal of Gay and Lesbian Mental Health says that when people have not gone through puberty yet, when you're getting those sex changes, they're easier to perform because they haven't gone through puberty. But have you given a person enough time to really consider, are they actually transgender, or are they maybe gay or something, before you're doing these surgeries that it's a lot harder to undo than do it. So they gave really good pros and cons to waiting or going through different things like surgeries earlier in life. And it was a really interesting discussion.
So now we're going to discuss, like Larry brought up earlier, transgender restrooms at actually our university. So there are options available, which when we were doing this study, a lot of us weren't even aware that there were options available. And like you guys stated, you guys didn't even know that there was options available. Only half of you stepped forward indicating that you knew that there was a restroom for transgender students. So all the freshman dorms have accommodations provided for these transgender students, except they're in an inconvenient location. They're on the first floor. So think, like for example, McMaster, that's on the first floor and there's one available. Kids have to walk all the way up from the third floor down to the first just to use the restroom to feel comfortable. There is also another situation in the fact that there aren't showers provided in those restrooms. It's just a toilet and a sink. So they do have to shower with the women's or males' restrooms. So one of the things we noticed why we think that not many people are aware of these transgender options is because maybe that there's limited designated signs indicating that it is for transgender. All they say is restrooms. They don't say transgender restrooms or neutral restrooms, they just say restrooms. And based on the Huffington Post, only 150 universities and colleges across the U.S. have gender-neutral restrooms, which is a very small amount of universities. So we think expansions past dorm rooms would be beneficial, so including them in the library and HPCCs where students feel as if they can go to the bathroom and feel safe and secure.
Right, and then in phys ed, being transgender, there's a little bit of an issue there because with the issue of locker rooms, how are we able to choose or make the students go in which locker room? Do they go in the boys or do they go in the girls? And laws have been created so that they can choose to go in whichever restroom they want to. But in a PE setting, that might not be the case because in 99% of high schools that you either have a boys' locker room or a girls' locker room. And actually my cooperating teacher said he had an issue like this. He said that one student he used the male locker room, but he identified as a female. And when they were going over the phys ed requirements, like the push-ups, sit-ups, and that stuff, like all the boys have to get like 20 and the girls have to get like 10. So this kid asked, what do I have to do? And my teacher said, he goes, well, which locker room do you use? The boys, so you have to use the boys. I don't know if I would have said the same thing in that situation, but I want to be more aware of that so I know what to do in the future, so I don't make the same mistake. And I kind of want to know your guys' opinions. How will we allow students to use the locker room of their choice, and do you believe that we should? Blair.
So I guess I have a question in regarding to your question. So in order to be transgender, do you just have to like publicly come out as transgender, or do you wake up and decide, you know what, like, I don't think I want to be a female anymore, I think I want to identify as a male? I don't understand like how you become transgender. Like, is that with the sex change? Is it not with the sex change?
It's not with the sex change.
Okay.
Sex change is just an option. Some people who identify as either gender choose to keep the sexual organs that they were born with. And that's just a personal opinion and their choice. But just being transgender means that that person does identify as the opposite gender as what they were born with.
So is there like requirements for, like, do you have to dress a certain way? Do you have to, or can you just say, I identify as whatever?
You can just say that you identify as male today, and like I could be wearing this, but say I want you to call me him, and that's completely fine. It's pretty much just up to the person what pronouns they want, how they want to dress, how they want to act, how they want to be perceived by other people.
And I think that's a challenge that leads into schools, and that's a challenge schools are facing now, and other people and understanding of how it works.
And I guess how we allow all students to use their locker room of their choice, I guess it's really difficult then, because then you have those like inappropriate teenage boys who are going to say, oh, I want to be female today because I want to watch the next change. And it's like it ruins it for everybody else who truly is, you know, transgender and who truly is identifying with a different gender. And so I think, I don't know, I just think it's really.
And it's more of like a convenience issue too, because if they want their own like personal restroom, they're probably gonna have to go down to the clinic or the nurse's office and use that restroom in there instead of just changing in the locker room with everyone else.
And also make it easy to make it so that every child has to change in the bathroom stall, so that because obviously a quick way to give away your gender is to change in front of somebody else. So if everyone was therefore required to change in a stall, so everyone has 2 minutes, you have a lot of time to change for gym class. So if someone was, the teacher was standing in the locker room, made sure every child went into the stall, changed their clothes, and then came back out.
With this too, I think there's a lot of misinterpretation of what people are accepting as being transgender. Not everyone will accept the same reasoning, kind of. So on some places they'll be okay, well, what's on your driver's license? That's the gender you are, not what you identify with. So there's not really a uniform way to kind of be like transgender accepted in like society. So that's another issue that kind of comes up with this.
All right, so this is a good segue for me. Being transgender is such a huge deal from a psychological standpoint. The earlier that you can help and assist people who identify as transgender, the better. The less likely they will be to develop like anxiety disorders, suicide attempts, things like that. And obviously, as we've touched on, their suicide attempted rate is through the roof. The national average is like 3 to 4%. So for them to be at 41, that's really, really high. So gender theorists hypothesize that gender nonconformity is the root cause of the discrimination faced by transgender people because of their inability to do gender. And that's from Miller and Goldman. And actually there are many studies by leaders saying that transgender is biological. One study did find that regional gray matter in male to female transgenders is more similar to men than women. But so basically that study is saying that the gray matter pattern in a transgender person's brain is more similar to that of the gender that they identify with. So if someone is born a man but identifies as a female, then their gray matter in their brain would look more like a female. And so, I think next slide. Yeah. So transgender youths have a 2 to 3 time higher risk of depression, anxiety disorders, suicide attempts, ideals, self-harm without lethal intent, and in and outpatient mental health treatments, and that's from Reisner 2015. So with those numbers, that's such a high percentage that we could be preventing by taking measures in things like schools and locker rooms and restrooms, just by taking an extra step to making people feel a little more comfortable in their own skin. We can help decrease these numbers. And like Gabby said, that there's not something that uniformly identifies people as transgender. And like your question, it was so good, like what does that mean? It means whatever the person wants it to mean, which is confusing for some people, but in the end we just need to accept whatever that person wants us to call them. So I think that that's really important, that it doesn't matter what's on someone's driver's license or their birth certificate. It matters how they are feeling and how they want to be perceived. And not just because they want to wear a dress or they want to cut their hair in a certain way, but because we want to reduce the suicide attempts and their anxiety disorders, and we want to reduce the depression that they feel for not fitting into our society.
All right, so